Hello and welcome to Families Made Differently. I am Bex Baker, your host. Myself and Jack are in our final stages of our third adoption. It has been such a privilege hearing from other foster carers, adopters, kinship carers, and others involved in the lives of vulnerable children. They come on every month and share their stories about how they are loving and caring for care experienced children. Please get in touch via email or DM us on Instagram if you would like to share how God has been working through you in the lives of vulnerable children.
Hello and welcome to Families Made Differently. This is Bex Baker, your host, and I am joined with Shona. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Shona. I was adopted when I was very small, so I was just 5 days old, and that wasn't yesterday, that was quite a while ago.
Great, thank you. How has adoption shaped your family?
So certainly my adoptive family, I was adopted at just 5 days old, so I was very little. I was placed for adoption at that point in time and was adopted. The papers were all signed and the adoption legalised 3 months later, so it was really quick. But, you know, we're talking 50 odd years ago. I'm not sure that was out of the ordinary at that particular time. 18 months later, my mum and dad adopted my brother. We're not related, so it was another adoption. He was 6 weeks old when he came, and my mum maintained that he had been a really unsettled, unhappy baby because he missed his mum so much. That's my overarching memory of my brother arriving.
If you've spent 6 weeks with a birth parent, that probably makes sense as well.
Yeah, but that's probably hard though, like when the baby's then placed with an adoptive mum. That must be really hard for the adoptive mum then, you know, in terms of what that's like. But my brother arrived and we both always knew we were adopted. I'm not sure how adoption actually shaped the family because we were quite a normal family. There was not anything, partly at that time I guess because nobody really talked about it outside. You know, it was just this was the baby, and it was only people that were really close that would have known that the baby was anything other than the biological baby of my parents.
So you always knew you were adopted. How did that make you feel?
It didn't feel odd or anything like that. I do remember always being told that I was really special and that my mum and dad had gone and they had chosen me. So there was a whole thing about being chosen and being special. That was the story all the way through. And the story that my birth mother, wasn't able to keep me, and so therefore she had put me up for adoption because she knew that this was the best thing and the best chance that she could give me. And so it was all really positive. It wasn't until a lot later, till I was a lot older, that I recognised how much pressure that actually put on, that whole thing of, you know, we chose you, you're special. And it's like that's quite a lot to live up to. And it wasn't until I was much older that I realised how much that had shaped, you know, trying to live up to being special or live up to appreciating all of this or whatever.
That's actually really interesting. So that's not necessarily the best thing to tell a child, essentially. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I totally understand why my mum and dad did that. I totally get that, because this was about the culture at the time that would have been seen as second best, you know. So they had lost 2 babies, naturally conceived babies of their own. They had lost 2. I think their fear was that people would look and think this was second best, and so they were trying to communicate all the time that this wasn't second best. We were theirs, and you know, there was nobody else, and that we were special and chosen. And so it was almost a reaction to what might have been pushing from the culture at the time, from folks round about at the time.
And also trying to secure your identity in
That's right.
in being loved.
That's right. And the thing was that the whole securing the identity thing as well, at that point in time when they were matching for adoption, they actually matched they tried to match based on physical characteristics and also on social class. So they tried to go across the kind of both spectrums, if you like. And so as I was growing up, I looked really like my mum. I had the same colouring, you know, kind of same features and all the rest of it as my mum. And so it was like nobody would have looked at us twice and thought that we weren't mum and daughter.
Was it an open conversation that you could have with your parents?
So it was an open conversation as far as being adopted was concerned. My parents, my mum in particular, always said that she didn't know anything other than the fact that I was adopted, that they had gone to the nursing home to pick me up, and that was that. On regular occasions told the story of how they had to go and pick me up because they didn't have a car. And so they were based here, about 20 miles outside Glasgow, and I was in Glasgow. And so they had to get from here to there. They had been told that there was a baby imminent, and they thought they'd been told when the baby was due, and then there was no phone call at the kind of due date. There had been a phone call to tell them that the birth mum had gone into labour, but then there was nothing after that at all. 4 or 5 days after when they thought they were going to hear, they had thought they weren't going to hear at all, that the thing had fallen through. And then out of the blue, on day 5, they got a phone call to say, can you come this afternoon for the baby? But they had no car, no nothing. And so they regaled with a story about how the plumber down the road lent them his van, so off they went in the plumber's van with the plumber to pick the baby up. So
I mean, it's a good story.
With the carry cot on the front seat, so it's like all very safe. And
And was it something to be proud of, being adopted?
That's what was communicated in the house, that it certainly wasn't something to be ashamed of. I remember it wasn't something that I talked about outside though. My mum and dad were always really open about it in the house, but it wasn't something that I would have had conversations with people about outside necessarily. I do remember when I was in primary 7 at school having a conversation with a boy in my class about the fact that I couldn't do whatever it was because my mum and dad had said that I shouldn't do that or whatever. And I remember him turning around and saying, I don't know why you pay any attention to them anyway, they're not your real mum and dad. And I didn't know that anybody outside of the family knew, and that was complete news to me. But discovered subsequently, I knew that his mum and my mum were friends, and so his mum had obviously said something that was kind of blurted out in the playground. And I do remember feeling like I then had to try and explain that to other people who had heard him with this outburst kind of thing. As far as my parents were concerned, and actually the extended family, the adoption thing was something to be, I'm not sure proud's the right word, was certainly something to celebrate.
So I met Adoptee who was like 5 or 6, and his assumption was that like everyone else was like him, that like everyone else was adopted. Was that your assumption or not really? You knew you were different.
Yeah.
And somehow you also knew not to talk about it outside the home, where it was an open conversation inside the home. It's really interesting.
I couldn't even tell you why that was the case. I just remember that it wasn't a thing that I would have talked about outside at all. In the house it was talked about. In fact, I remember growing up, my brother continually saying that, you know, when he grew up he was going to adopt a son. You know, I remember when he was really little he would talk about that.
And did he?
No.
Oh, okay. So adoption identity is often a place of insecurity. Was this the case for you? I guess maybe in that story when he blurted this.
My reaction to that blurting out from that kid in school was to defend my mum and dad. I remember having a square go back in terms of, well, you know, my mum and dad really care for me, and it's like at least they care for me kind of thing. I remember having that conversation, at least they're concerned for me kind of thing. So all of that. The identity thing I don't think came until very much later. So growing up, I don't think there was an identity issue. I think there was a real security growing up. I think the identity thing only came when I was much older. Yeah.
And did it come with insecurity or not?
I don't think it came with insecurity. I think it came with curiosity when I was older. I've described it to people, particularly when it's a closed adoption, which mine was. You grow up with a piece missing, so there's always a piece of the jigsaw that's missing somewhere, because you just don't know. When I was little, my mind would make up stories about what this other family might have been like or whatever. Not because I ever wanted to be part of that. I was very happy where I was. Very loved, very secure, and they were my mum and dad. You know, that was that. There's always that, I wonder, because there's a bit of the jigsaw missing. And that whole thing I've not ever really recognised. And I know I say I looked like my mum, and I did look like my mum, but knowing that was just coincidence. You know, so you didn't ever have anybody that you really looked like, which was interesting. I had a friend when I was growing up who was also adopted. She wasn't white, she wasn't Scottish, and for her that was a much bigger thing. But I remember when she talked about it saying, I totally get that, totally understand. And it wasn't until we both had our kids that we actually had somebody that genetically looked like us, or biologically looked like us.
Yeah. What has shaped your identity as an adoptee?
So I think adoption does shape your identity. I think it would be wrong to say that it doesn't. It can't fail to, because it's a huge part of who you are. Until I was much older, I don't think I would have recognised in what ways it had shaped my identity. I think though, my adoption was a Church of Scotland adoption, and I was brought up going to church. I was brought up with faith, and so for me that kind of owning that faith for myself was really the thing that started to shape my identity much more than the adoption was. But I always felt that it gave me a completely nuanced handle on the whole being adopted into God's family, because it's just like, and it used to make me laugh because when people talked about being adopted into God's family, I thought, well, now you know how it feels, don't you? So
yeah.
But there's a whole adoption thing in there too. So yeah, adoption shapes you, there's no doubt about it, but actually there are other things that shape you just as much, if not more.
Has being adopted impacted your faith journey?
I'm not sure I've ever really thought about the adoption impact in my faith journey. I think it impacts it in as much as that understanding of what that means to be adopted. So that whole idea of having exactly the same rights and status as the natural born, because that's what adoption is. As soon as the adoption papers were signed for both my brother and for me, we are my mum and dad's kids, and we have the right to the inheritance just the same way that any natural born kid would have. And I think that has always really coloured my understanding of faith, because that's what Jesus tells me, that I'll have the same rights as him.
For some people, based on what they know of their birth family history, there's no way they would have ever touched faith almost.
Growing up, I didn't know what my birth family story was,
That's
so
fair.
I wouldn't have known. Interestingly, having subsequently investigated and traced, I do know what my birth family story is, and it always makes me laugh. So it was a Church of Scotland adoption. My birth father was Jewish, and the nursing home was a Roman Catholic nursing home. So it was a kind of meeting of all faiths and none, just at the right in the middle there.
Fair.
So interestingly, so there's a whole lot of things fell into place for me, because I had always had a real pull towards Hebrew. Anytime I heard, if I picked it up on the television, or some worship music that was maybe sung in Hebrew, or the Hebrew words that were put into a song, and I didn't know why at all. And then, because I had no clue that there was anything in my background, and then when I went to trace and discovered that actually my birth father's family were Jewish, I'm like, oh, right, okay, that's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting. What advice would you give to adopters as they nurture children within their home to ensure they grow up with confidence and security?
I think in terms of adoption, children and adults as they grow up need to know that it's okay to ask and it's okay not to ask. Adoption, when I was adopted and when my brother was adopted too, were really closed setups, and so we didn't know anything. Tracing from the other direction, any contact from the other direction was impossible, because the names were changed, the birth certificates weren't available. So it was really, really closed. And so that culture says to you don't ask questions, this is who you are now, forget about this. We've almost swung the pendulum in the other direction, where the whole thing is open. And so I would imagine now, if I was being adopted now, there might be a real pressure on me to actually engage with my birth family, or to build a relationship, or to keep in touch. And I actually think that it's okay to choose and it's okay not to choose. So it's okay to say, I want to find out and I want a relationship, and it's actually okay to say I don't. I think that's the most important thing. I think also for adoptees, there was never any question for me about who my parents were, ever. In actual fact, that was one of the most difficult things to get across to them, that there was never any question. Yeah, I traced and I met my birth mum, and I have contact with my birth father's family, and there's never any question about who my mum and dad were and are. Never. And I think that's really important for adopters, because there's a real security in that, to know that actually it doesn't matter. This is not a competition to see who we want to be with. It's the nature nurture thing. There's an awful lot more to being a mum or being a dad than simply birthing a child.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you. That is the end of my questions. Thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Please make sure that you follow us on Instagram and turn on your notifications wherever you listen to your podcasts. Families Made Differently releases a new episode on the first Friday of each month at 9 a.m. Please comment on the podcast or slide into our DMs with your favourite bits, what inspired you, any questions you have, or if you too would like to be involved. We really appreciate your listening ears and continued support. This was Families Made Differently, the podcast designed to share stories from Christians in the UK whose lives and families have been shaped by fostering and adoption.